The Australian property market has officially split into two, and if you don't know which side you're on, then this video is going to be insightful for you, and it may change your mind on how you should be investing in 2026. While house prices in Sydney's premium east are falling, you're seeing Perth's southeastern market absolutely on fire. If you're new here, I'm Ella. I'm the host of Property Unlocked, and I'm joined here by Tiffany. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm glad to have you back again for another episode. It's been a little while since your last one with me, and I know you've added a few properties to your portfolio, so we'll definitely touch on that. But today, what we will be doing, Tiff, is going through those three driving forces that are really splitting the market into two. Blue chip markets are crashing, affordable markets are booming, and there is a very clear picture we are going to paint of where the market is going next. So let's begin with the numbers here. Nationally, house prices are up 9.9%, which sounds fantastic, and it's the fastest annual pace we've seen since June 2022. But on a quarterly basis, which is what we look at as an indication of momentum, we are actually seeing that growth slow down. So to paint a picture of this, Sydney is down 0.2%, Melbourne down 0.6%, Perth is up 7.3%, and Brisbane is up around 5%. Tiffany, you own a property in all of these. Not Sydney, but the rest of these. How are you finding the market?
Yes, I do own 4 properties in total at the moment since we last caught up. So my most recent transaction was in Perth, which has already grown by over 10% in the past few months.
How many months?
Oh, I would have settled this in December.
Yep, so about 6 months.
It's May now. So, yeah, close to.
10% in 6 months is pretty good.
Yes. And then I've got the Melbourne property, which has already grown by 8% since I last settled in November as well. Darwin is on track. It has grown about 20% in 1 year.
That's bloody good.
Which is pretty good. And with my first property in Brisbane as well, it's grown a lot. It's more than doubled in 4 years. However, I am starting to notice that the market is cooling off a bit there.
Simply put, what we're seeing in the market right now is the expensive suburbs within every city are really cooling off, and we're seeing momentum fade. Yes, they're still growing. Well, Sydney and Melbourne, those expensive suburbs are not growing, they're going backwards. But the momentum is definitely cooling off across the board. But of course, the saving grace are those more affordable suburbs where you own. The majority of your properties are in those affordable areas like Perth Southeast, for example, Tiff. But let's begin with the number one reason for why we are seeing this slowdown in the market. And that's simply interest rates. The RBA has been consistently lifting the cash rate this year, 2026, which of course makes the cost of credit more expensive. It forces borrowers, first of all, to reduce their budgets as they can't service as much debt. The debt becomes more expensive, so you see them tightening their belts. To put that into perspective, a 25 basis point rate hike on a $1.5 million Sydney mortgage, it's a completely different number to the same hike on a $550K mortgage in Perth. The debt is bigger in Sydney, the repayment increase is larger, and the buyer pool is smaller. Now, for a $730,000 mortgage, which is below the Sydney median, by the way, each hike adds $117 per month. And on a $1.5 million loan, you're looking at an extra $240 per month. Every single hike. And again, we've had multiple hikes already in 2026, and there are multiple more rate hikes on the cards. So this does not look good for home buyers who already have high interest rates. Tiffany, how are you going with your mortgage? Are you feeling any of this mortgage stress that other buyers are definitely feeling?
I think it's more important than ever to start budgeting if you haven't done so already. I do think cash flow is now becoming top of mind for a lot of investors, including myself as well. Which is why when I'm investing, I make sure I have some buffers in place to help manage my cash flow, and in the event that there are more interest rate hikes to come as well.
So you're well prepared.
Yes, correct.
And, it's good for the listeners to know that all of your investment properties are tenanted, so you also have rental income assisting you with those repayments.
Exactly right. And like this is why I'm quite selective with the markets I'm buying in. And this is especially why I didn't buy in Sydney as an example, because when the cost of debt is this high, you need the yield to service it. And Sydney's gross rental yield is 3.1%, which is one of the lowest in the country. So if you're buying a $1.5 million property, that yield doesn't come close to covering a 5.67% investor rate. So you are deeply cash flow negative from day one, which doesn't really suit my investing risk profile.
Absolutely. It wouldn't for the majority of investors, especially like yourself in your 20s going into your 30s. You want to be able to enjoy life and not feel mortgage stress. So the bottom line here, in terms of interest rates and how it's affecting the market, you're seeing the more premium markets, both in Sydney and Melbourne, being hit the hardest. For the reasons we mentioned, people tightening their belts. And if someone had that budget of 1.5 mil and then they're seeing multiple cash rate hikes, they're going to reduce that budget down to 1.25 or even less. That places you in a completely different suburb, a more affordable suburb. And that's why we're seeing resilience in those more affordable pockets within each city. Now, as you mentioned, Tiff, there is an affordability ceiling in every city that we need to be sticking to in order for growth to continue. And it's very clear that Sydney has just crashed into its ceiling. When a market doubles, triples, quadruples, at some point, the pool of buyers in that market who can actually afford to participate, it shrinks to almost nothing. First home buyers are priced out. Upsizes are locked in, investors can't make the numbers work, as you mentioned, Tiffany. And when buyer demand compresses like what we're seeing in Sydney, you don't need a crash catalyst. You just need a few less people at the auction. All of a sudden, you have less bidders, properties passing in, vendors discounting their reserves. And what does that equal? Prices coming down. And that's what we're seeing in Sydney. So at the moment, auction clearance rates nationally are at 52.7%. That is the lowest since July 2022. And of course, back then we had all of the uncertainty around COVID. No one knew what was going to happen. The decade average, for context, is 64%. That's not a market in stress. It's a market where buyers have quietly walked away. And of course, that means less demand in those more premium areas that we see the majority of auctions being Sydney or Melbourne, especially Melbourne's premium eastern suburbs. Now, when we cross-reference this with mortgage stress data, the picture sharpens even further. Sydney's household income to mortgage ratio is amongst the most stressed in the developed world. The people who are born in Sydney's east are largely holding on, inheriting property, but they're not buying more, and new buyers simply cannot afford to enter that market. Perth, Adelaide, the affordability is completely different. Here we have Perth's median property. It's a fraction of Sydney's house price. Investor yields in Perth are at 3.7% against a 5.67% investor rate. That's still a gap, but it's manageable, especially when capital growth in Perth is running at 24% annually, which is wild. So Tiff, what's your experience like with the Perth market?
Look, to be honest, we are starting to see that the Perth market is starting to cool down.
Less momentum, yeah.
Exactly. There's less momentum. There's not as many buyers showing up to viewings and auctions. That's the feedback that we've been getting on the ground with some of the local agents in the area as well. But that's quite similar to some of the markets across Australia, like Brisbane and Sydney as an example. We're hearing that there are some pockets in those areas where momentum has started to cool off as well.
Now, reason number 3 for why we're seeing this market split, it really is coming down to the uncertainty in the market currently around negative gearing changes, cost of living pressure, and of course, that is being exacerbated by what we're seeing within the conflict within the Gulf states. Inflation is still above target in Australia. Households are tightening their budgets, but the impact is not uniform. A household in Sydney's east with a $1.5 million mortgage is absorbing rate hikes and energy prices and the cost of living compression all at once. A household in Perth's southeast with a mortgage of $450,000, it's much more manageable when it comes to the cost of living pressure when you have a mortgage that is half of that rate, not to mention their property has doubled in the past 5 years. So managing the cost of living pressures, it's dramatically less debt exposure when it comes to those more affordable properties. And there is broader conversation on negative gearing changes. Every time there's a policy signal, even a rumor around changes to negative gearing, you see it show up in investor confidence, and you especially see that at the premium end first. And that is because if you're buying your investment property in a premium suburb, let's say Camberwell, for example, you're looking at a lot of debt. You're looking at being negatively geared, and every shift of the interest rate, any less negative gearing benefits, you're going to be hit even harder. And at some point, the numbers are not going to stack up. So, Tiffany, what are you seeing in the Melbourne premium end of the market at the moment?
Look, the premium end of the market, you are seeing not a lot of buyers in that space because when there's news out there that reduces the buyer's confidence, a lot of people reevaluate what their purchase price is going to be. So you're no longer seeing a lot of buyers in that $900,000 to $1 million range anymore. You're now starting to see those buyers who can still afford those be conservative with their budgets, and now they're buying 700 to 800K properties. So the more affordability end, I still think there is a bit of competition in this price bracket because it's more affordable for a lot of investors. But I'm starting to see, because of the market at the moment, there's a lot of conservatism. There's a lot of cash flow being reevaluated.
I agree. And you know what else I'm sensing? It's just buyers sitting on the fence. They want to see things play out. But of course, you have to be participating in the market in order for things to play out. But regardless, it's just more, I would say, a lot of sensitivity until we see how the changes to negative gearing or the capital gains tax discount, how that affects the market. You're then going to see confidence re-enter and buyers re-enter the market. Holistically, of course, every city, every location has a different market within a market. And that really brings me to why some of these markets are still winning and providing exceptional capital growth. Under all of these three forces, there is one structural driver that's tying everything together, and that is supply. So Cotality's monthly chart pack from April 2026, the data set has shown us really clear visuals on supply. States where dwelling completions lagged behind population growth since 2020 saw values more than double. Western Australia, for example, up 119.6%, Queensland up 100%. Victoria, on the other hand, built the most amount of homes of any state, around 1/3 of all national completions, and recorded the weakest growth of all, 17.9%. So that relationship is perfectly inverse. When you have more new houses being built in a city or location, of course you're going to see less growth. Total listings nationally are 15.1% below the 5-year average. New listings are 6.1% below, and national dwelling approvals are at 196,000 a year, still 43,000 houses short of the Federal Housing Accord target of 240,000. We are nowhere near building enough homes to close the gap, and that is why we still have that housing supply shortage, which is really putting pressure, lifting up house prices and fueling capital growth. That's what we're seeing. Tiffany, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you on that. Like, the supply gap is the most acute in these exact markets that are growing the fastest. So Perth's total listings are down 29% year on year. Median days on market in Perth is just 9 days. 9, which is really short.
That's quick.
The national average is about 30. So when homes are selling that fast, it tells you everything about the demand and supply balance.
Yep. You know, there is sort of a rumor, and it may be confirmed by the time this video goes out, in regard to the capital gains, the negative gearing not affecting new houses. So if that comes out, you're going to see a lot more pressure on builders building new houses. You're going to see investors choose to build brand new, home buyers choose to build brand new, whether that be an off-the-plan apartment or house and land package. This should, of course, increase supply over time, but again, it doesn't happen overnight. Tiff?
Well, I would have also thought you have to factor in the construction costs that are still rising year on year as well.
Yes.
Because of that, the developers who are building these houses may not see profitability in these projects, and therefore that still contributes to the shortage in supply that we have at the moment.
All of this new building is relying on the private sector. If it's not profitable, if it's not feasible, you're not going to see that development. And there was an article in the AFR recently with the major developers, Stockland being one of them, have come out and saying it's nearly not feasible at all to be developing these new housing estates. And the mum and dad home builder would tell you the exact same thing. Why am I building a brand new house when it's more feasible for me to buy an established house and simply renovate it and add value that way? So we'll see how this plays out. It's not going to happen overnight again. But yeah, very interesting. Lots happening in Australian real estate. So let's put all of this together and let's be super honest about where we think this is all going. The affordable markets, Perth, Adelaide, Perth's southeast, Adelaide's north, Darwin, Brisbane's outer ring, regional WA, regional Queensland, even regional Victoria, they still have structural support from supply shortages, and you're seeing demand driven by people who are looking for affordability. I mean, regional Victoria, Bendigo, buy a house for $550,000. You can't do that anywhere else anymore. You can't do that in Brisbane or even Perth. Yields are also reasonable. You're achieving over 4%, which is nice and supportive for an investor's cash flow. Vacancies are tight. 1.6% nationally against a decade average of 2.5%. So this is not a market that's about to roll over. These markets still have momentum and the underlying drivers are still very much intact for these affordable markets. The premium markets, on the other hand, Sydney's east, Melbourne's east, southeast, they are facing a convergence of headwinds, those three factors we touched on, that don't resolve quickly. And you're going to see continued downwards pressure on house prices in those premium markets. So this is not a prediction of a crash of Australia's house prices. Crashes required forced selling, unemployment spikes, mass defaults, catastrophic oversupply. We're not seeing any oversupply. So none of these things are present. Yes, vendor discounting is at around 3.1%, but sellers are not panicking. They're holding on if they're not getting their goal price at the auction. A slow, grinding decline at the top end is what I expect to see. Tiffany, what are you expecting?
Well, look, I think if you're already sitting on a blue chip asset in Sydney or Melbourne right now, I'm not telling you to sell because long-term, these quality assets do hold value.
Yep.
But if you're thinking about where to put your next dollar, the data is quite clear. Affordable markets with supply deficits and positive yield profiles are where the growth story is right now.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. On the back of that, I feel like, yes, if you're looking to buy your home, honestly, take this as a window of opportunity. Take this as your opportunity to go to an auction, buy it after it has passed in, get it for a discount. If you're a home buyer, that's what you should be doing, taking advantage, because you're not buying to flip. You're not even buying to sell in 5 or 10 years. You're buying this asset for the long term into your retirement. So there's no need to look at this negatively. In fact, you should feel positive that you finally have an opportunity to enter the more premium suburbs, whether that be in Melbourne or Sydney. All of the data we mentioned today is from Cotality's monthly chart pack, a bit from SQM research and a few AFR articles. So I'll include the reference for those. If this video has changed the way you're thinking about Australia's real estate market in 2026, please leave a comment below. Let me know if you have any questions, what your thoughts are. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And of course, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Tiffany, for coming on.
Thank you.
See ya.